In this respect, I think they've overstepped their bounds. What I do in my free time should be up to me, should not be up to the union.
Ontario firefighter Tom Hunt's on Byline yesterday talking about the battle he's fighting with his own union. Hunt's is a firefighter in the city of Toronto, but when he isn't working, he also answers calls for the volunteer force that serves close to his home in Innisfil, Ontario. His union wants him fired. They want to strip him of his pension for this. Well, John Downs is a radio host in Toronto with News Talk 1010. He joins me now. John, I'm guessing this is getting a lot of people talking in Toronto about, is this the role of the union to get good firefighters fired for being a firefighter in their off time?
The union thinks so. They say it's pretty clear you're not allowed to go off and fight fires on your spare time. They say your spare time is meant to recuperate from your job here in Toronto. So from that sense, they may seem to have an argument. Let's keep in mind, he's a volunteer firefighter in a small town. We're not talking about him taking time off and, fighting 3 or 4 fires during his days off. We're talking about very often medical calls.
He's going to answer collisions, car collisions.
Yeah, and I don't think there's too much in the way of stress there. I don't think there's too much in the way of risk. And that's what the firefighters union is arguing, saying, look, you're supposed to be taking a breather, taking time off, and not firefighting.
All right, well, Corey Mainprice is with the Professional Firefighters Association, and he says there's a reason we work the shifts we do and a reason we have days off between our shift. That time is designed to recuperate. They could be returning to their full-time employer, potentially not ready for duty. I don't know how many firefighters you know, professional firefighters you know, John, but I know quite a few. Most of them have a side job. They're involved in construction renovations. They run home inspection services, sometimes very demanding physical labor, sometimes not. But a lot of these guys have a second job. The union doesn't care about any of those as long as it's not one that they could represent if they force the towns to hire full-time professional firefighters.
Well, and this is the thing, is some of the arguments they make fall flat because they're arguing, well, you could be hurt on your job as a firefighter, and we cover you in that sense as far as insurance goes, drug plans, things like that. But they don't seem to be making the same argument when it comes to other jobs, some of which are actually rather taxing.
Well, I know guys that do roofing. Yeah, you could fall off a roof. The mayor of Innisfil, we caught up with her earlier today, and she just said, look, we can't afford this.
Yeah.
I don't believe the town of Innisfil could afford a full-time professional fire service exclusively. We're a very big community geographically, and we simply could not afford to have four full-time fire stations. If we are not allowed to use double hatters, we lose the opportunity to have a passionate firefighter, well-trained by tax dollars, volunteer in our community to do what he likes to do, loves to do, and is trained to do.
Do you think the mayor has a point, John?
She does. And actually, by making her point, I think she proves what the motivation of the union here is. And that is to say, well, no, you shouldn't have volunteers. You really need firefighters, but towns just simply can't afford that. And the status quo, even though the union doesn't approve, actually works pretty fine. And it makes sense that you've got someone who is a pro doing this in smaller towns as opposed to people who learn to do it in their spare time. It just doesn't seem to make sense. And if you look at the popular opinion, it's on the town side. And
I've got family, I said this to Tom Hunt yesterday, I got family members that are volunteer firefighters in their communities. They can't always leave because during the day, because they're working in another town, some of them, maybe their employer won't let them go. And the mayor, Barb Bagley, said the same thing. She said, Tom Hunt is valuable because he can respond during the day. Roll tape.
One of our biggest struggles right now is to get daytime volunteers because their life has changed, and it's not just small mom and pop businesses. Employers have cut down, the bare bones, and so therefore they're maybe not as willing to let their employees just take off in the middle of the day. So people like Tom Hunt, who's a double hatter, he's home off his shift and he's there and he fills in some of that gap.
John, you live in Toronto. I think your city's crazy, and I'm not talking about Rob Ford. I think the administration completely is crazy. I could see them firing Tom Hunt. Which way do you think they'll go?
It's going to be a tough one because they'll be setting a precedent. And ultimately, this does, I think, come down to the arbitration process. I think it's going to be tight because the rules are clear and they're in black and white, and he's known them. He signed on the dotted line. So the law is not on his side, even though popular opinion is.
All right, well, we'll see if the wider laws, perhaps even charter rights, come into play. We'll continue to follow it. John, thanks so much.
Thanks, Brian.